next part is very important. They're going to take you. Cut out everything you see about them. Hair color, eye color, tall, short. If you let my daughter go now, that'll be the end of it. If you don't, I will find you, and I will kill you.
Good luck.
Told you I would find you.
The movie begins with Bryan Mills, a retired government agent who deeply loves his daughter, Kim. He's no longer with his ex-wife, Lenore, but still tries to be a part of Kim's life. For her 17th birthday, Bryan carefully picks out a karaoke machine, knowing Kim dreams of becoming a singer. At the party, Lenore isn't exactly warm toward him, and when Bryan gives Kim the gift, Lenore mocks it a little, but Bryan gently explains that it's something Kim really wanted. He snaps a photo of her smiling with the gift and adds it to a scrapbook. Then Kim's stepfather, Stuart, shows up and surprises her with a horse, which makes Bryan feel a bit out of place.
Hey, Bryan. Stuart?
Later that evening, Bryan is at home when some old friends drop by with drinks. They know how much he cares for Kim and how he left his old life behind just to be near her. One of them, Sam, offers Bryan a short job, guarding a famous singer at a concert, and Bryan agrees. The next day, Bryan and his friends are working security at a concert for a famous singer named Shira. During a quiet moment, Bryan chats with her and mentions that his daughter wants to be a singer. Shira laughs and jokingly suggests picking a different path. Later, Bryan gets a call from Kim inviting him to lunch, just the two of them, and he's genuinely happy to have some one-on-one time. But suddenly, things take a turn at the concert. A man rushes the stage and Bryan quickly steps in, stopping the threat and making sure Shira gets safely to her car. Shaken, Shira breaks down in tears, but Bryan calmly reassures her. Afterward, Bryan and his team receive their payment, but then Shira asks to speak to him privately. She thanks Bryan for what he did and, as a kind gesture, gives him a list of contacts, including her manager, to help Kim get a shot at her dream. Bryan is touched and truly grateful. The next day, Bryan is excited to have lunch with Kim, hoping to surprise her with the contacts Shira gave him. But when he arrives, Lenore is there too. Just as Bryan is about to share the surprise, Kim tells him she wants to go to Paris with her friend Amanda. Bryan quickly realizes this lunch wasn't just about spending time together. Kim needs his permission to travel since she's still under 18. Concerned about her safety, Bryan says no, explaining it's not a good idea. Kim storms off, frustrated, and Lenore also disagrees with his decision. Later, Bryan changes his mind and brings the signed permission letter, but he sets 3 conditions. Kim must call him every night, tell him if she changes locations, and let him drop her off at the airport. Before the trip, Kim asks Bryan about his past, saying she always wondered what he did for work but was too afraid to ask. At the airport, while helping with Kim's luggage, Bryan notices her itinerary and finds out she's not just visiting Paris but multiple cities. He feels betrayed, but stays calm. Lenore explains they hid it because of his strict rules. He stays composed, says goodbye warmly, and even snaps a photo of Kim and Amanda before they head off. In the next scene, Kim and Amanda arrive in Paris. At the airport, they meet a friendly guy named Peter who offers to take a photo of them. The girls agree, and Peter then suggests they share a taxi to save money, which they accept. Meanwhile, back in the US, Bryan tries calling Kim, but she doesn't pick up. While riding in the taxi, Peter secretly notes down their address and makes a call, saying there are 2 girls and sharing the location. Later, inside the apartment, Kim and Amanda are enjoying music. Kim notices her phone ringing. It's her dad, so she steps into the bathroom to hear him better. Suddenly, she sees a group of men entering the apartment and grabbing Amanda. Panicked, Kim describes everything she sees to Bryan over the phone. Bryan quickly starts recording the call and tells Kim to hide under the bed. He calmly instructs her to stay quiet, observe everything, their faces, voices, and anything that might help. He hears the men speaking in another language just before they find Kim and take her too. After the call goes silent, Bryan speaks directly to the man who picked up. He says if they let his daughter go, that will be the end of it. But if they don't, he will find them, and there will be consequences. The man on the other end simply replies, "Good luck." Bryan immediately calls Sam and sends him the recorded audio. Then he rushes to Lenore's house to break the devastating news. Kim is missing. Bryan checks Kim's room for any clues, and just then, Sam calls back. He's already activated his network of contacts. Using voice analysis and language patterns, they identify the men as being from Albania, specifically the northern town of Tropolja, a place known for organized crime. One name stands out in their system, Marco from Tropolja, someone tied to a long history of human trafficking. Sam shares the harsh truth. These groups are known for abducting young women, forcing them into dangerous situations, and moving them across Europe where they often disappear without a trace. The statistics are chilling. If Kim isn't found within 96 hours, the chances of seeing her again drop drastically. The weight of that hits Lenore hard. Overwhelmed, she breaks down in tears and begs Bryan to bring their daughter back, no matter what. Bryan arrives in Paris and heads straight to the apartment where Kim was last seen. He carefully examines the scene, retracing what likely happened. He finds signs of a struggle, Amanda's belongings, and even a strand of hair, which he takes as evidence. While searching the room, he also finds Kim's phone. Looking through her photos, one image catches his eye. Peter, the man they met at the airport. Cut to the airport. Peter is once again scouting for new tourists. But this time, Bryan shows up and demands answers about the two American girls. Peter panics and runs, with Bryan chasing him through the airport. Before Bryan can catch him, Peter is hit by a speeding truck and dies on the spot. With that lead gone, Bryan visits an old CIA contact named Jean, who now works in Paris law enforcement. Bryan asks for help, but Jean warns him that taking matters into his own hands could cause problems. Still, he points Bryan in the right direction, suggesting he look for clues among the street-level networks where those Albanians operate. That night, Bryan hires an Albanian translator and heads to a busy area where he approaches a woman working the street. He starts a conversation, hoping to learn more. Suddenly, a man steps in aggressively, warning Bryan to stay out of it. In the confusion, Bryan quickly attaches a hidden microphone to the man and steps away. Back in the car, the translator listens in and tells Bryan they're talking about a location, something about a construction site. Bryan follows the lead to a construction site, which is secretly being used for illegal activity. Posing as a customer, he steps inside and sees several young women, all under the influence, looking lost and mistreated. As he scans the room, he spots a girl wearing Kim's jacket. He gently asks her where she got it, but she's in no condition to respond clearly. Realizing she might know something, Bryan takes her with him. When the men around them react violently, Bryan fights his way out and escapes safely with the girl. That night, Bryan helps her recover by giving her the medication she needs. Later, he gets a call from Jean, his former colleague, who warns him to stop. Jean says Bryan is causing chaos in Paris, with injured men and bodies showing up, and that he'll be arrested if caught. Bryan calmly responds, saying he's not leaving without his daughter. Meanwhile, the local police trace Bryan's phone to a rooftop, but when they arrive, they realize they've been tricked. Bryan was speaking through a walkie-talkie from another location. The next morning, the rescued girl finally wakes up. Bryan asks her about the jacket, and she says it was given to her by a kind girl, his daughter. She recalls the place where she last saw Kim, a house with a red door, and gives Bryan the exact address. Without wasting a second, Bryan heads straight there. Bryan follows the trail to a rundown building with a red door, a place tied to the group he's after. Staying calm, he walks in and flashes Jean-Claude's police badge, pretending to be a French officer. The bluff works, and the men inside let him in, though they watch him closely. The room is filled with Albanian men, their relaxed posture hiding the tension in the air. Bryan claims he's investigating a case involving missing girls and begins questioning them. His attention locks on one man in particular. Bryan, already suspicious, calmly asks him to translate a simple phrase, "Good luck." The man repeats it.
Good luck. Good luck.
Good luck.
And it's the exact same voice and accent Bryan heard on the call when Kim was taken. Bryan fights with precision and force, taking down the men in a brutal hand-to-hand fight. He's not here to talk, he's here to make them pay. After the dust settles, Bryan searches every room and eventually finds Amanda. She's alive, but in a terrible state, weak and barely responsive. Bryan captures Marco, the same man whose voice he heard during Kim's abduction, and chains him to a chair in a dark, abandoned room. Holding up a photo of Kim, Bryan demands to know where she is, but Marco stays silent, refusing to talk. Bryan remains calm and focused. He points out that the metal chair Marco is sitting on is wired to an electrical source, and without a pause, he flips the switch. Marco jolts in pain, but Bryan doesn't flinch. He repeats the question. Still, no answer. Bryan turns the power on again, this time for longer. On the third try, Marco finally breaks. Terrified and gasping for breath, he tells Bryan that the girls are being held at a private estate, a high-security mansion where they're sold off to wealthy buyers. Bryan listens carefully, then walks away. He doesn't say a word. As he leaves, the power is still running, and Marco is left behind. Bryan tracks down Jean-Claude at his home and confronts him face-to-face. John isn't directly part of the trafficking network, but Bryan knows the truth. He's been accepting bribes, turning a blind eye, and allowing the operation to continue in Paris. Furious and running out of time, Bryan demands answers right in front of Jean's wife and children. When Jean hesitates, Bryan pulls out his weapon and fires a warning shot, not to harm, but to make it clear he's done negotiating. The message lands. Shaken and cornered, Jean finally talks. He He reveals that the girls are being sold at a private auction, held inside a heavily guarded estate near Neuilly, a place where the ultra-wealthy make sure no one asks questions. Disguised as a French police officer, Bryan sneaks into a high-security estate where a secret auction is taking place. The property is luxurious, guarded, and full of silence that hides something sinister. With forged credentials and careful movements, Bryan makes his way through the halls until he reaches a hidden chamber behind layers of security. A dark, extravagant room filled with shadowy figures seated in private booths. Behind glass walls, young girls are being led out one by one, dazed, barely aware, treated like property for the highest bidder. Bryan watches with a clenched jaw, scanning each face, until he sees Kim. She's weak, barely conscious, and next in line. Thinking fast, Bryan quietly approaches a wealthy bidder nearby and convinces him to place the highest bid on Kim, promising to explain everything later. The man agrees, and Kim is won, for now. But before Bryan can make his next move, security realizes something's off. He's caught, restrained, and surrounded by guards. But Bryan's instincts take over. With ruthless precision, he breaks free, takes down his captors, and begins tearing through the estate. Unstoppable and focused, he's getting his daughter back. No matter what, Bryan spots Kim being forced onto a private yacht by armed men, the final step before she disappears for good. He races through the dockyard, but the boat is already pulling away. Without a second thought, Bryan sprints down the pier and makes a daring leap from a nearby bridge, landing hard on the deck. Gunfire erupts as the guards react, but Bryan fights through them with relentless precision, taking each one down in close combat. He pushes forward through the chaos, determined, until he reaches the inner cabin. There, he finds Kim, frightened, weak, and clinging to herself. Bryan rushes to her and holds her tightly. He made a promise, and he kept it. He found her. Later, back in the US, Kim is reunited with her mom and stepfather at the airport. They're overwhelmed with relief and gratitude. A few days later, Bryan has one last surprise for Kim. He takes her to meet Shira, giving her a real chance to follow her dream of becoming a singer.